Welcome to the Atwell Podcast.
Actually, if you told me like probably 10 years ago that this is what I would be doing into my 50s, I would have probably said you are crazy. That's not exactly how I saw my life playing out. Um, so my father passed away in 2018, and at that time I had a job that I really, really hated. And so I decided to take a year off after my dad passed away just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. At that time I was, I think, 47. Um, And I remembered seeing a movie, Patch Adams, starring Robin Williams. It was about a clown who actually happened to be a doctor. And so I went on his website because I thought, oh, he's actually a real person. This is like a true story. So I started following Patch Adams a little bit, and I saw he had a clown trip coming up to Russia. That was in 2018. And I thought, oh, how hard could that be?
Hmm.
So on a whim, I just my dad never traveled, and so I just was really kind of doing it as kind of kind of like a tribute to my dad, in a way. So I decided to sign up for this trip, and before I knew it, I was in Russia with 35 clowns, and we, we were we were going to hospitals and orphanages and burn centers and you name it. We were going everywhere, and and I never really thought I would actually do it again once I came home. But once we were there, I just saw the impact that we were having everywhere that we went, every hospital that we went into, or every hospice that we went into. Um, just seeing people in pain when we walked in the door, and then the moment they see us, their face lights up, and it's almost like the problems that they were having at that particular moment when we first got there, they just disappeared for the little length of time that we were there. And I thought, wow, there's something to this clowning thing. I'm not really sure what it is. And then just amazing things kept happening on this trip. And when I came home, I thought, well, I have to figure out a way to make amazing things happen here, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and so I just slowly started to figure out how to incorporate clowning into the life that I already had. As I mentioned, I quit that job. So I really just kind of started clowning in nursing homes and going to nursing homes and um, creating fitness classes for them. I was dressed as a clown and we would exercise with balloons and we would just have a really fun time. And that's kind of really how um, the ball got started. So after I did the trip with Patch to Russia, I then went with them to Morocco, Mexico, and Costa Rica. Of course,
Wow.
COVID was in there in the middle. So so
Yeah.
I did my clown tour in 2018, and then I didn't do another one until COVID was over. So
Yeah. The first thing that pops out there is the Patch Adams thing. So, believe it or not, I actually live like 45 minutes from where the hospital was in
oh, okay.
Pocahontas County, West Virginia. So, surprisingly, though, the story isn't very well known even for us locals. I
Really?
think
Yeah.
the weird thing about where the hospital is, it's in a county that's called Pocahontas County, so extremely rural. There's not even a red light in the whole county. There's not any kind of fast food restaurants. It's just like a little gas station, some houses. Um, and I think that's kind of a good thing because now that it's kind of on my mind, refreshing my memory, it's kind of like as rural as it is, his idea, and you just sort of correct me if I'm wrong, was is to heal people kind of with happiness, letting your body naturally do it. And that's going to be a lot easier done in a rural area, given our values, than it is maybe an urban area.
Yeah, and I mean that basically is him in a nutshell. He feels people can be cured more through humor and human connection than by pumping them full of drugs. And so that's always been his philosophy. Um, he said he has never given like any kind of like antipsychotic drugs to anybody. He's just gone in and he's just really talked to people and spent time with them and to get to the bottom of what's causing whatever issue they might be having.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, just to add to this story a little bit, so my wife went through, she got diagnosed with cancer at 29, a really rare and aggressive type, and she survived through it, and thank God for that. And she's been 2 years cancer free. On the other side of that, and how it relates to this, is I had a person on my podcast, a beautiful woman from California named Jennifer Greenhut. and she was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and it had a 90-some% chance of killing her within 5 years. The same type my wife had, and she actually has lived 8 years. And her philosophy on this, I'm not a doctor, but her philosophy is that just to be super positive and to let your body sort of heal itself with just being happy in your situation.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and honestly, whenever I went to Russia, I mean, I didn't have a disease per se, but I was dealing with the death of my father, and then years ago as a kid, I was bullied a lot as a kid, and so, and then I was bullied into adulthood. I grew up with an abusive alcoholic stepfather, and
Mm.
so I had a lot of angst even before I was going into my first clown trip with Patch. And the thing that I noticed is when we got to Russia, our job was basically to be happy 24 hours a day for 14 straight days. So that was kind of a job in itself. Um, and then when I came home, what I realized is all that sadness that I had from my father passing, and then all that angst that I still had built up, and the anger that I had built up with all of the bullying that I just suffered for years, all of that was just gone. I mean, so there is something behind, living a life that's happy. And so it was kind of like, you know what, I decided at that time um, that I was going to let go of all that stuff that was weighing me down, all that stuff that um, gets me upset, um, and all that stuff that you're holding on to. Because a lot of times, a lot of that stuff, the people that you're angry at don't even know that you're angry at them. So the only person that is seeming to affect is still you. So, yeah, so I totally subscribe to that fact that happiness can cure quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, I feel like a psychologist could tell me like exactly what it's called, but I do like a similar thing. I'm not a clown, obviously, but when someone kind of upsets me or makes me really mad or something, I have this tendency to want to do something good to them,
Mhm.
and it kind of breaks that ugly kind of wall around my heart at that particular time. So, I mean, obviously, being a clown, like it's your job to kind of do that all the time, I guess, to a degree.
It is, like I said, and I totally agree. I used to get really angry whenever I would go to a store and the person in front of me didn't hold the door open. So, I'd be very sarcastic. Thank you for holding the door open for me.
Hmm.
So, uh, so now so now I'm to the point, when somebody doesn't hold the door open for me, if I see that they're leaving before me, I'll go and actually hold the door open for them. Just,
Hmm.
it's just a small little gesture. I talk to homeless people, whenever I walk into a store, whether I have money to give them or not. But if I have money, I'll give them money, but I'll at least say hi to them because most people don't even say hi or acknowledge them. So
Hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I just try to do what little bit I can wherever I am.
Yeah. I wanted to share a story from like 10 years ago in regard to opening a door. So you gotta understand I'm from West Virginia. So if there's someone within 10 feet of you at a door, you hold it open for them or you're considered rude. This is just common knowledge. So I went to this dark place called New Jersey. And I didn't realize, like, so I was at a gas station and they pump the gas for you. I thought they were being nice, but it's actually so people don't run off with you know.
That could be.
Yeah. So honestly, like my Southern hospitality, I kind of want to, do things I just learned my whole life. But I got to this door and there's a lady right behind me. And this is probably after the 100th time I've been cussed out for my driving compared to people in the city. But I go to hold the door for this lady. And she looks at me as she walks in. She's like, I don't have nothing to give you. And I was like, she thought I was a beggar just because I held the door open for her. I was like, golly, Ned, you guys need to lighten up.
Yeah, it's it is quite a sight the way some parts of the world are, even in our own country.
Yeah, it was like a
Yeah.
totally different country for me,
Mhm.
but that was a long time ago. I wanted to ask you about something because I know we're going to get into a lot of stuff overseas. But I wanted to ask you about the bullying. Like, well, like what made you get bullied as a kid? Because I actually did too a little bit.
Um, I think part of it, even as a kid, I mean, I didn't dress like this,
Mhm.
but I always dressed. I always like to wear different kind of clothes than what normal other kids were wearing, um and I think I kept to myself a lot, so I really wasn't that outgoing as a child, so I really try to keep to myself, and so I think a lot of people see that as weak. So
Hmm.
it's like I always walk with my head down and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so then I would have kids, who would, push me or shove me into lockers or trip me or steal my books or whatever it
Mhm.
happened to be. Um, until I just decided at that point I was just going to have fun with them. So, that in a way that's probably why I'm the clown today. They kind of made me
Mhm.
a class clown at that point because when they would come up to do something to me, I would cause a scene. I would scream really loud, or I lay on the floor and flop around like a dead fish, and
Like
they were
make the situation as awkward for you as possible.
exactly, and they were like, "This kid is messed up." So, so after a while, it was just like they were like, "Don't even mess with that kid. He causes too much trouble." um,
Yeah.
but then I just kind of started remapping my day. So, and I would still get it. I would still get people. If anything, then they would just call me names. When they thought, oh, okay, well, if we push him into a locker, he's gonna make a scene like he's
Yeah.
like he's like being killed or whatever. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so
That's
then they just
funny.
so then it just became a name calling thing, and I wasn't very athletic at that time, so I think that was one of the things that caused a lot of people to bully me, because when gym class came, I was like, oh, let me go hide under the bleachers because I don't really want to play
Yeah.
baseball or whatever happened to be. I'd be out there in the middle of the field and I'm like, please don't hit this ball to me because I don't want to drop it. And
Hmm.
you
Do you
know,
think that I guess the thing that sort of comes to my mind is because you mentioned that you had a stepfather who was like really bad, I guess. Um, do you think not having a positive male figure made you lack confidence through your childhood and teenage years?
that probably was it, honestly. Yeah. Because I would get bullied at school and then I would go home and then I would hear it from him. And, you know, he was
Mhm.
always, going to take the belt off and he was going to whip us and all that kind of stuff. So it was just kind of, um, I think at that time, which is kind of opposite of what I do now, but at that time I kind of walked through life and I wanted to be invisible. I didn't want people to see me or recognize me, or it's like if I can just blend in, so that I'm not drawing any attention to myself. Um,
Mhm.
but I think sometimes even trying to do that draws more attention to yourself, because you are withdrawing, and they're like, well, something's wrong with that kid because he's.
You stand out more maybe
Yep.
instead of like going through the pack. Well, personally, I don't think that I went through as bad as what you did, but I did go through some bullying, particularly in my teenage years. So I'll share that, and it'll kind of set us at ease a little bit. But basically, I was very athletic. I was really good at football. I was looked at by colleges, even from a middle school standpoint. And so I had that going for me. I was pretty good looking, but there was a big thing that was socially more acceptable now than then. And that is like, so as I said, I grew up in a rural area. So I would wear basketball shoes. I would wear clothes typically related to athletes and more typically related to the black community. And, I had a very adverse background. So I would listen to, music that I could relate to, which at the time was rap music. And, I've really got bullied a lot. It got to the point that I swear on everything I love, it was a half a mile from my home. I would have to walk from the school bus. But I got jumped every single day by this group of rednecks. I made one of them mad while he was cousins with every other one in town, it seemed like. And my gracious, beat the tar out of me over and over. But I got really fast at running, so that kind of helped on the athlete end. But it sucks because you're going through so many emotional changes when we're growing older. I have a 12-year-old and 10-year-old now, so I see the emotions. And then when you compile like a bad stepfather that you're dealing with, or getting jumped by people who don't understand a different culture than what they grew up in, it really affects how you're perceiving your life. And honestly, I feel for you in your situation because that's a day-to-day thing. If you're living with someone, you don't get to like me, I just had to deal with it in the morning, and in the evening, I'm done. You were dealing with that every day.
Yeah, and it's just, but it's like you said, it's like you find a way to outmaneuver them, kind of like you were able to run really, really fast. you
Mhm.
know, um, with my stepdad, he was an alcoholic, so he would drink a lot. So, when he would come running after me, it's like I would go and I would lock my bedroom door, and while he's banging on the door, I would climb out the window and I would run out because we lived out in the country. So I would run out.
Yeah.
By the time he got into my room, he couldn't remember why he was even coming to my room to begin with. So he would go
Mm,
pass out somewhere, and I'd climb back in the window and go to bed. And so
yeah.
it's just like you learn how to outfox the bullies, I guess. You figure out, like, and even in school, it was like if I knew I was always getting beat up after, fourth period when I went to get my books, I would take my books for fourth period at the beginning of the day, and I wouldn't go back to my locker at that time. So I would just kind of reroute my day based on, when I thought they would be somewhere else.
Hmm. Yeah, you got to learn to adapt to the environment that you're in. So I guess one other question on this, I'm sorry to probe.
Oh
I'm
no.
known for trying to learn more. But how did your mother perceive this? Like, was she trying to cater? Was she like dealing with him being abusive too?
Ironically, he never hit my mother. Usually he was always trying to tell my mother he wasn't drunk, and she always knew different. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, as a kid though, I never really told her all of the stuff. I never told her that I was being bullied at school. Um, or I never told my real dad, that either. I guess in my head, I had this idea that, oh, if I tell my parents that I'm not being liked, they'll think that they did something wrong when they were raising me, kind of thing. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's just kind of like a weird warped sense of
Yeah.
something in my head. So it's like I never told them. I don't even
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't even know if I told any teachers. I don't even think I told teachers back at that time. It was just kind of like I thought, well, this is just something that's happening. It's something I got to deal with, because I did know kids who told the teacher, and then the bullies were 10 times worse. So sometimes telling somebody doesn't always solve the problem. So I was in that mindset of, well, if I tell somebody, then these kids are going to wait for me after school, and they're really going to let me have it, or they're going to let me have it on the bus,
Hmm.
because they're going to be mad that I told. So, and then if you tell somebody, and then that person that you tell doesn't really do anything about it, they just kind of let it die with, them knowing, then nothing really happens either. So I kind of subscribed early on that, what, just telling somebody is not really going to be beneficial. So
Hmm.
I need to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
And whatever warped sense of way I figured that out.
Hmm. I think when you're getting bullied as a kid, that it hurts your confidence, obviously, into adulthood. But at some point, as we get into our 30s, I'm 33 myself. I'd imagine that when you get into your 40s and 50s, that you start, separating yourself from your childhood a little bit. You know,
Yeah, now I don't give a hoot.
yeah, yeah, and
You know,
because you're able to become your own person and you have more control over your life. You have control over, more importantly, the relationships that you allow into your life. So now, if someone's going to be mean or rude to you now as an adult, it's like, okay, well, you're blocked. I don't need you.
that's exactly it. And I never would have gone to like Walmart or the gas station in this outfit that I'm wearing today.
Yeah,
But now if I'm like on a way somewhere and I'm already dressed like this and I have to get gas, I'm like, well, okay, I'll just stop and get gas, and I don't think anything of it.
yeah, yeah. Well,
you
I
know.
think you're awesome. I think you're dressed awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Um, yeah. So, I guess if you don't mind, we'll talk a little bit about the job itself and the philanthropy side of it. I know that you started off basically in Russia 2018, in philanthropy type stuff. So, I guess one question is how does this work from a financial standpoint? Are you just taking money from a nonprofit or
No, basically, yeah, I pay it all. I
really?
work, or yep, or I fundraise. So, like with Patch, whenever I went on Patch's tours, it was just like, we paid him a fee. And then with the fee that we paid him, he booked our hotels, and he paid for our transportation once we got to the country. So we'd have to pay for our airfare, and then we had to pay, the fee for the trip. And so that kind of is still that way. So I started my own, after about 4 tours with Patch. I thought I really liked the tours that we were doing with Patch, but then I still wanted to, do something a little bit more. Like when we go with Patch, it's like, we give them love, and we give them connection, and we give them our time, and we play, and we do all these great things. And I'm like, man, I wish we could leave something behind. I wish I wish there was something that I could give these people, like whatever it is that they might need. Like if you go to an orphanage and you see that the kids don't have any shoes, or I was like, man, I wish we could have brought shoes or something. So that's when I started my own company just a couple years ago called Clowns on a Mission.
Mhm.
Um, and while I was working at one of my nursing homes, one of the ladies there said, "Oh my gosh, I have a niece who's starting a church organization in Guatemala. She would love to have clowns come." And
Mhm.
when I started talking to her, she wanted to do a backpack program because there, if children couldn't afford school supplies, they can't go to school. The
Mhm.
parents have to figure out, should I feed the kids today or should I send them to school? And so most of the time, feeding your kid was more important than sending them to school. Um,
Mhm.
and so we decided to get backpacks. So we all and school supplies. So we raised money through like selling T-shirts and you know, begging for begging for donations. Um, and then again, kind of like what Patch did, I charged some clowns to go with me. And then with the money that they paid, that's what we used actually to offset the cost for the backpacks, the school supplies, and whatever we were doing in Guatemala. Um, so last year we went to Guatemala with the thought of buying backpacks and handing backpacks out. So we bought 200 backpacks filled with school supplies, and we were in Guatemala and we were handing those out. Um, and then, and then Kim, who was the lady who was the one who was hosting our trip, she said, "Oh, these kids, they haven't eaten. We should buy them some food." And I'm like, "Well, that's not our mission. Our mission was to get them backpacks, and we already spent money on backpacks. Like, how much is food? And
Mhm.
so when we realized how cheap food was, we made a pivot while we were there. I mean, not only did we give the backpacks out, but then we went to the local store. We bought 200 pounds of rice and 200 pounds of corn, and then we went back and we bought little scales, and we measured them out like kind of like they do cocaine.
Yeah.
So here we are in Guatemala, and we're bagging up corn and rice, and we're tying them off.
Mm. Oh, golly,
So
man.
yeah, so everywhere we went, then we handed out rice and corn, and then we also bought cookies and juice boxes to give the kids immediately when we first showed up. That way, we knew that they were at least eating immediately when we were there. So
Mhm.
we kind of made that pivot. And so this year, when we went back, we went there in February again. My goal was I wanted to do a soup kitchen. I didn't know how that was going to work out, um,
Mhm.
and so or what that was going to entail. So we decided that there was a community that lived across the river that had about 200 residents. And so we decided to make fried chicken and macaroni salad and provide tortillas and drinks. And so we got that all organized. And then we had to drive across the river. I didn't realize we
Mhm.
had to drive across the river to get there in our rental van.
Mhm.
So I was a little panicked. I'm like, "Oh, we're renting this van. Now we're gonna be stranded in the middle of the river." Uh,
Yeah. It's close down.
yeah, so, yeah, there's always some kind of a challenge that creeps up anytime you want to do something. So that was kind of it. So, but we actually get over there and we clowned with them and we had a great time with them, and then we were able to feed all of them. So I
Mhm.
mean, we were so blessed to be able to feed everybody who was there. Uh,
Mhm.
and then again, we bought staples. We made bags together that had rice and beans and corn and pasta and condensed milk and just all the little staples that they would need to sustain them for like a week or two.
Yeah.
And so we would hand those bags out. So that was how I wanted to do my clown tours, a little different than what Patch does. Is I just felt this need to give back a little bit more, or at least leave something when we go. I wanted to know that you know at least while we were there, we were really, really helping these people, not only, mentally and physically, but we are
Mhm.
also being able to nourish them as well.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm actually graduating college in like 3 weeks and
Awesome.
starting on my master's. And the reason I bring it up is because the whole reason I went is because I want to get into philanthropy work. And, my calling, I guess, what I figured was is to try to get into, education and then go that route. But I have traveled extensively at this point overseas, and I've been in some crazy areas. And if you don't mind giving me some time, I'll tell you a story.
I'm sure, yeah.
So basically, I just flew back Wednesday from Egypt, and I spent 8 days there. And of course, going into it, I wanted to see the pyramids. I went and saw the pyramids in Mexico last year, and anyway, so I come into it with a good mindset. But keep in mind, I did not know that Egypt was a third world country. And for my viewers, you'll know that I've already posted some videos about my trip on the YouTube channel. But when I say a third world country, I'd been to Bethlehem, like Palestine. I'd been to Jericho, the other side of the West Bank. I'd seen poverty overseas on a different scale. I've also seen poverty really bad in the United States. I was even homeless for about 2 years throughout my childhood. So I feel really strongly about this. But when I got to Egypt, man, I'm telling you, I saw kids starving to death. I saw urine and feces in the streets. I saw crumbling infrastructure. You would think, like in your mind, if you thought, well, the pyramids are the eighth wonder or the seventh wonder of the world, they're the greatest archaeological site in the world, you would think big corporations, big hotels, things like that outside of them.
Mhm.
But it's nothing but crumbling infrastructure and kids starving. And of course, using Google Translate, there was this one girl. I lost my hotel. I'll tell a couple stories here. Um, so this girl, she helps me to my hotel, and I'm using Google Translate, and I give her like 200 Egyptian pounds. That's like $1 or $2 of our money. And but keep in mind, 200 Egyptian pounds can feed you for a week or more.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So I gave her 200 Egyptian pounds, and she looks at me and she speaks into my Google Translate, and I screenshotted it. It says, "Can I please have one more, money, because my sister's really hungry at home." And I almost collapsed. And kids just, I never seen kids like that skinny that's begging for money. One time I was at a KFC right outside the pyramids, and I gave these kids was looking at me going like this, and I gave them some fries. And next thing you know, like 20 of them come up trying to take all the rest of the food on my plate. And you would be sitting at a restaurant trying to eat, and kids would be outside pointing to their mouths saying how hungry they was. It'd just make you nauseous. You couldn't even eat, you know. I say all that to just honestly get off my chest, but also to tell you how appreciative I am of you doing philanthropy work in impoverished countries, because it's still needed.
But and I just finished a manuscript for a book, and it kind of goes along with even what you were just talking about. It, and it's called "Be the Someone," and it talks about um, not only my mission, but kind of like you were there, in Egypt, and you were saying, the kids were coming up to you, and probably your first thought was, "Wow, somebody should really do something to feed these kids." Well, you know what? You're there, you're there right there. So your first thought was, hey, let me give them some fries, let me see what I can do. And sometimes that's all it takes, is to start some kind of a philanthropy
Yeah.
a philanthropy thing, is for you to really just notice that there's a need somewhere, and then just go, you know what, I don't know who's going to be here to do this. I'm here now. Let me see what I can do, and solve this immediate need that I see. And that was just kind of like when we were in Guatemala, we thought, oh, we're doing this great thing with the backpacks. And then we realized, hey, these people are hungry. They haven't eaten. And so that's kind of like, well, you know what? And my first thought was, well, somebody should really come here and feed these people. And that's when Kim's like, well, we're here now. And I'm like, oh, I guess you got a point. So,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how we got started, um, and so that's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly how movements get started, is just one person like you. So maybe Egypt is a spot that I need to look into. If I knew somebody in Egypt who could kind of find some way for us to get there, and find a be on the ground to kind of show us communities to go to, that might even be a place that we could go.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That, yeah. So the thing with Egypt that really put me into a mind game is it's called the scam capital of the world.
Mm.
So people are always scamming. They call the tour guides there the mafia. And you gotta understand that Egypt has went through 2 revolutions in the last 15 years. So the government is non-existent. And I did not realize all this. In my mind, I'm thinking Brendan Fraser and the Mummy. Let's go see some cool stuff, you know?
Right, right.
And you get there and you see these things. And like I saw a family one time, we were driving up the road and we saw a family digging in the trash, 2 kids, mom and dad. And I was like, yeah, God. I was like, you guys have such a opportunity for tourism and money to be brought in. And just it was like a systemic thing, it really was.
I'm just curious, how did the people there seem as far as their happiness level? Because one of the things I'm finding, like even when we go to Guatemala, is like these people have nothing, but they seem so happy. You walk into a community and they might not have eaten, but they're playing and they're having a good time, and they don't appear as if there's anything wrong. So they're just they're having fun. And I just found it very interesting how in our country kids have so much and they don't appreciate it and they're very unhappy. But then you go somewhere else and you give them a ball and they act like, or in my case, we blow bubbles, and I took these old guns that shoot bubbles, and that made them the happiest that you couldn't imagine how happy they were. And so I just find it interesting
Yeah.
how they can remain happy in spite of their circumstances.
Yeah, yeah. So you bring up a really good point. So I will elaborate on this a little bit. Just a disclaimer, it's going to be a little controversial, but I'll just relay honestly what I saw and how I interpreted it. So the children of the country was very happy. They would play soccer in the streets. They would put up a couple of rocks for their goals and play. So the children themselves are happy, and children generally everywhere I've been has been happy. But there was a huge gloom in the country. And like I said, this is going to be a little bit controversial, and I apologize for that. So the thing you got to understand about Egypt is it's a third world country, but it's also a Sharia law Muslim country. And just keep that in mind because it means certain things. Whether you're Muslim or not, the thing about it is that the culture does not value the same things as other cultures do. Let me give you an example. Men were allowed to marry up to 4 women. They're allowed to have 4 wives. Now, you might say, well, okay, well, that's their choice. And the wives did have the right to divorce the husband if they couldn't handle the extra wives. So that's good. But here's the difference. All the women had to cover up, and I saw multiple women with my own eyes get abused by their husbands. Husbands also was not allowed, well, let me reword. Husbands also was not obligated to live within the household that they were married to. So, in other words, the husband marries a woman. She's not allowed to do anything ever without his permission, but he doesn't have to provide. Well, if she doesn't work, that causes extreme poverty across multiple families. Um, Another thing, without any government being present, social programs was non-existent at all. Like there was none. So it took people in little villa communities to pitch in and do work. Um, so I would say that with the culture that they believed in and what I saw with my own eyes, I saw abuse at the highest level of humanity. Muslim men would typically recruit children to do scams, to steal, to beg without need. I picked up on that a little bit later in my journey. But it was just, I just, like I said, it's a little controversial because it's like a religious thing. But for me, I value giving to the poor. I value helping people. I value women's health. I value being a good husband to my wife. I can't imagine hitting my wife and making her not allowed to wear clothing, those types of things. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, just it's funny because when you were in Guatemala, I went to Mexico City last year and I wanted to see the pyramids. And the Mexican people were wonderful people. Um, I think 70-80% Catholic. A lot of people don't think it, but on the news you heard, well, the immigration was so bad and the people were so terrible. That's not what I saw. I saw really nice, wonderful people, and I would have, helped them any way I could.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Mexico. We actually went into Mexican prisons, and at first I was kind of a little leery of going into the prisons, especially it's
Mhm.
dressed like this. But
Mm.
but no, I mean, I saw the same thing. It was like I was not the whole time we were in Mexico, I was not afraid. Same with Guatemala, same with Costa Rica. And of course, you got to realize too, when we go to these countries, you're like Costa Rica sounds, oh, I would love to go to Costa Rica, it's so tropical, and well, that's not the part we were in. you know,
No, right.
you know, we go where the poverty is. We go where the people are needing us. So we don't always see the most where the tourists would go. We don't normally go to. Now, this time when we went to Guatemala, we spent our last day in Guatemala. We did go to Antigua, where all the tourists go, just to kind of unwind from our trip, just to kind of
Oh,
see something touristy. But like I said, for the most part, we were in a little town called Monjas Jalapa, and there was just a little podunk town, and we just kind of went through there. And luckily, we have a local pastor who's on the ground in that town, and he knew all the areas that had need. And so that was kind of his job, was to kind of go out and find the areas that needed stuff, and then we went and delivered and got them what they needed.
Do you get to frequently work with churches when you go to these areas? Is that like your home base person, or?
Yeah, that's typically what we like to do. Like I said, I just actually just found the church that I go to here in Arizona. I just found out one of the guys at our church, his brother lives in Costa Rica, and he's actually a pastor there, and he has like this big church organization in Costa Rica. And so actually, as soon as I got back from Guatemala, I talked to him.
Mhm.
And so there is the possibility of us going to Costa Rica, to where his church is located, and providing food for the people that he knows. He also has churches in Nicaragua and Venezuela, and there was one other country like around that area. But those areas, I guess, because of the current state of the world, I guess we can't get into, like Nicaragua. Um, Honduras was the other one. And we can't get into those right now, being an American. Um, so I'm hoping that we can at least go to Costa Rica and kind of get our feet wet with his organization there. And then when
Mhm.
kind of the world is in a better place, that we can still go and visit the communities in the
Yeah.
other countries.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that that you won't get to go to those places later.
Right. Mhm.
I'm taking my wife and kids to Puerto Rico in December, and it's kind of a family trip, but I'm quite sure from the sounds of it that we'll see some poverty and some things. I really like that. I really like the fact that you do that you go through a lot of churches. I'm actually graduating from a Christian university, Liberty University, here in a couple weeks. I'm really grateful for that. It's just a fact that the Christian church does more philanthropy than any other type of religious organization in the world. So when I was talking about Egypt being a Sharia law Muslim country, I kind of felt bad for it, but knowing that you're in church, I don't feel as bad about it any longer. It was my first experience in that type of systemic evil, I could say. And like I said, the children were great. The
Mhm.
women were great. The men, there's just something wrong.
Well, it's really interesting, and I didn't really pick up on this the first year we were in Guatemala. But one of the clowns this time brought it up. So we went to this community that had 200 people, and we were feeding them. And as we're, and you get so wrapped up in the moment, and then when you go back and you start, looking at the videos, and you start looking at the photos that were taken, my question was, I said, you know what? There's all these kids, and there's all these women and old ladies. Where are the men? There were no
Hmm.
men
Hmm.
at this community. And so they said, well, a lot of times, um, these men will actually leave they'll create these families, and then they just walk away and they go somewhere else. And so then it leaves these women with their children, and the children are then put to work. to kind of help try to find a way to support the family. But then it was once somebody pointed that out, I did notice like everywhere we went, it seemed like there were very, very few men in the
Mm,
groups we were in. It was just all women and children.
mhm.
And I just
That's a
found it
really
interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting actually. It feels like we just stumbled upon something like and maybe there's definitely a correlation, but someone smarter than me could come up with something that impoverished areas the men are typically absent.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like I said, it wasn't until I was going through our photos and I was like, we're the clowns are like the only guys, the clowns and our pastor.
Hmm.
We're kind of like the only guys there. So I was like, two clowns and a, and a pastor. That
Hmm.
sounds like the beginning of a joke, two clowns and a pastor walk into a bar.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
So, yeah, maybe you already said it, but kind of refresh my memory if you don't mind. Do you have any countries or areas planned for the rest of this year?
I don't, like I said, because right now with me planning, with us having to pay for everything, like I said, I'm trying to get my 501(c)(3) status for Clowns on a Mission so that we can actually take more donations. So that's kind of where I am with that. I'm trying to get the organization to kind of be able to sustain itself so that whenever we do have the need that arises, I mean, I would love to be like Pat to be able to do, a tour every month, and go somewhere every
Mhm.
month. Now there is the possibility I am looking into maybe possibly in October going to Costa Rica. I can contact that pastor in Costa Rica. I can find a few clowns who will want to go. And then some of the ones that went to Guatemala with us, and then we'll just take a group to Costa Rica. Because they have like a feeding center there where they actually like feed every day from like 8 in the morning until like 1, I think he said. They feed about 300 people per day. So I would love to be able to go to their feeding center. He also knows like the families in that area who are in the most need so that we could actually um, go do something with those particular families. We can get into the 2 schools that he ministers to, so we can go and we can do like some events in the schools and even do like a, you know, uh, pass out food and play with the kids at the school. And then we always have a pastor go with us. So we have that pastoral component where they will deliver a message before we get started. And then we will play and then we will pass out whatever it is that we've taken, whether it's food or shoes or, um, and so Costa Rica is really high on my list right now. Um, uh, just because I have somebody on the ground who can host us. So that's why it's kind of, I need to try to figure out ways to find other people in other countries who are on the ground in the country who can tell us where to go. Because and just as I'm sure you're aware from going to Egypt, where sometimes you don't want to be caught in certain places if you're a tourist and you don't know a local who can get
Mhm.
you in and out of places.
Mhm. That's how I felt in New Orleans last year. I literally like I took my whole family to New Orleans, and man, I'm telling you, so many people on drugs just laid out on the streets and different things. I felt more unsafe in New Orleans than I did in Mexico or Egypt.
It is why you say that because my mom thought, oh, it's her on her bucket list. Her bucket list was going to New Orleans. That was where we went, and so I don't know why I wanted to come here.
I'll tell you a funny story about New Orleans. I take a little ghost tour. I get on Viator, I'll order a tour, and it just tells you about ghosts in the area. My kids are with me, so, think 9 and 11, 10 or 12 is how old they are now. 9 and 11 years old, my wife. And, the kids get all scared listening to the ghosts, and we go back to the hotel. I figured it was going to be a good day. Mind you, we're a Christian family. This tour, instead of dropping us off at the starting point, dropped us off at midnight on Bourbon Street.
Oh no.
Oh no is right. So I had my 9-year-old by the hand and I'm just running through there. And there is I mean naked people on the street, people puking, doing drugs. I saw a cop sitting there in one of the bars with his head just kind of down. I wish I would have got a picture of it. It was the most decadent place I've ever been. And at one point, someone reaches out and tries to hand my 9-year-old something in his hand. I don't know what it was. And Noah, my youngest, he just reaches out to get it, and I jerk his arm. I about pulled his arm out of socket, and I'm like, "Don't ever take anything from people on the streets." And my son, he looks at me at the end of it. He's like, "Dad, why would you take us to a place like that? We're a Christian family." And I'm like, Isaac, I was like, dude, I had no clue they was gonna drop us off here. Like, I would have not came here. And
Well,
yeah.
see, that was a good teaching opportunity. Then you could read the stories in the Bible about Sodom and Gomorrah and say, "This is it."
There was, there was this one lady, she had to have been, God bless her soul, 250 pounds. And I didn't see her, but my whole family saw her, but she was stark naked all the way down to
Oh, no.
Adam and Eve stages. And she, and Isaac was, instead of being like all like, ooh, and stuff like that, he was disgusted. So, anyways, I don't think I'll have to worry about him waiting until marriage because I have a feeling that,
That pretty much did it for him.
yeah, that traumatized him. Yeah, that's funny. New Orleans is not a family friendly place.
No, especially not that area. We actually did not go. Luckily, when I was there with my mom, we didn't quite make it that one street over to Bourbon Street. So that was
Mhm.
good. We just took her to, as long as there's a casino close by, my mother's happy. So I took her where Harrah's was, and she didn't really need to leave that area. So like, okay, I'm good.
No, I don't blame you. I won't be back. I wanted to go to New Orleans because you think jazz music and like
Of
the
course.
slave trade, and you think about like Cajun food and like the Spanish American. Like, there's so many different things going on. But yeah, Sodom and Gomorrah. That's funny.
So so when you get to that part of the Bible, if you're reading the Bible with your kids, you go, "Do you remember when we were in New Orleans? This is it."
Yeah, that's so funny. But it's weird because like, and I feel like this is like something in most American cities. I was in Philadelphia just for a weekend last year. And when you land, you see like all these tent cities and homeless and stuff. And it's
We
really
have that
gave me a
here.
lot of, yeah, it really gives me a lot of, because I think so much about people in other countries and, from the sound of it, you do too. And kind of, for me, it's like in America, you still have the opportunity to get a job. But when you go to these other places, you can't just go get a part-time job at McDonald's.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, I always think about, so my dad passed away in 2018. My mother's getting older, and somebody says, "You think you'd ever move to Guatemala or somewhere like that, um when your mom passes, and so that you can do your philanthropy work right there on the ground." And I'm thinking, well, that would be a great idea and all, but I would have to get a job there. And it's not just easy for, I mean, especially me who doesn't speak that great of Spanish to be able to get a job in a Spanish speaking country there. So, I mean, and because I figured if there were jobs available to be had, some of these people who are on the streets there would have the jobs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, here there's a job on every corner, but not so in other countries.
You can go and work McDonald's to save up some money and get you a little beater car or something. You go to some of these other places, and it's like when you're talking about working in other countries, it's you got to make enough to sustain yourself and still have enough to give back.
That's it. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
mean, here you can get something, $20, $25 an hour. If you save right, then you'll have a little extra maybe, to give back. So income really plays a huge part in any kind of overseas work.
And of course, if I once I get to the point where I can get Social Security, if they have Social Security by the time I'm that old, um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But in the event that we do, then whatever I make on Social Security would be more than enough to live in another country. Because I mean, I've seen, like you were saying, we fed people in Guatemala, ourselves. Like we would go to a restaurant, and all of us would order a meal off the menu, and we paid
Mhm.
$30. $30 for all of us, to eat a big giant meal. So as far as being able to live um, comfortably in Guatemala on, I don't know, $1,500 a month or whatever it might happen to be, would not be that difficult. Um, but I don't know what how that all works out. I haven't really
Yeah.
looked too much into moving to another country yet, so
Yeah.
that's always a possibility.
I've always wondered, like, because I try to hit at least one or two countries a year. I usually try to do one, with a friend of mine, and then, my wife and children are starting to come along, for one a year. We got Cancun planned for next year to see Chichen Itza, but the thing is that um, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I just lost my whole train of thought.
Welcome to the world of being a clown.
Yeah,
When you lose your thought, you just make something else up.
yeah. My papa used to tell me that if you forget what you were saying, that you were lying.
That's
And that's
exactly what my mom used to say. Well, it must have been a lie. So
yeah, really did. Well, I guess let's see
well,
here. We're,
well,
we're
see, you
running
and your
about an hour.
since you guys go to all these other countries, I should talk you all into coming on the clown trip with us. Put your little red nose on you, get a little makeup, sit you
I
all
don't even know if I need makeup myself, but no, I've been thinking a lot about how to. Like I said, I'm going to college because my idea is to use somebody else's money to help people. It's possible I would never gain enough myself, but um, and what's interesting, the biggest thing that really stuck out to me with how you did it was to try to get in with local churches because they know what's going on the ground, and that gives you not only contact but kind of a base of operations as well to work through.
yeah.
It's a really good idea, really, really good idea.
And just actually kind of what you were just saying, that's kind of where we are too with our where we are. It's like we would love to be able to do what we do with other people's money. You know
Yeah,
what
right.
I mean?
Hmm.
If there's a way that we can, get all that maneuver, but like I said, um, but I just figured, you know what, I got to start from where I am. So where I am right now is I can get a group of people together, we can raise X amount of dollars, and we can at least start. And then
Hmm.
we will worry about expanding, and we will worry about getting other people's money, donations and things like that. We worry about that at a later time. We'll just help the amount of people that we can help now with what we have, and then
Hmm.
hope that enough people learn about what we do and will want to join us on one of our trips, and eventually we'll start seeing that kind of stuff materialize. And I figure if this is what God wants me to do, then we're gonna do
That
it.
makes sense.
We're gonna see how it'll sustain itself.
Yeah. So I guess my question is like you mentioned Clowns on a Mission. I'm guessing that's a website.
Oh yeah, clownsonamission.com.
And can people donate through there?
They
Like,
can, yeah. And then you
awesome.
can also see photos of like our past trips. You can also go to Clowns on a Mission on Clowns on a Mission official on Instagram, or Clowns on a Mission on Facebook. We do have tons of photos from our last two trips on there as well.
Hmm. I
And
feel like I looked them up. I feel like I saw one of the pictures. I'm guessing probably in Guatemala. It looked like you were giving something to some kids. There was a bunch of kids there in the picture. I feel like I looked it up maybe on Facebook.
yeah, we probably, I'm sure we were, yeah, because even if it wasn't food or whatever, then I always take tons of toys to hand out to my big.
Hmm.
This is like one of my these little slick chicken slingshots. The kids love them, so
Hmm.
you can just put them at people. So I take about 500 of those with me each trip, and so we're always handing out something. We do temporary tattoos, or we're just kind of having fun with them. And then, like I said, we try to give them either food or shoes or
Hmm.
um, so right now we're in the process of figuring out, what it is for the next mission when we go, what it is we want to do. We do know there's an orphanage that the children don't have shoes. So that might be one of the things we do while we're there, in addition to still doing like the soup kitchen and the grocery bags and things like that.
Yeah. Have you tried to seek help from churches in the continental U.S.? Have you like sent out flyers to see if they would help you?
That I have not done. Like I said, the church that I recently started going to, I started going to this church in about October of last year. And what really made me choose this particular church is because they do a lot of humanitarian things
Hmm.
locally. And then actually at the same time we were going to Guatemala for our mission, the youth at this church were going to Mexico to build a home. So now what I'm going to try to do is kind of see if I can get the church to maybe sponsor one of our trips to Guatemala, where we can get people from the church to actually from this church to go with us on our Guatemala trip. And it'll be kind of a little different kind of a mission trip for them, because they're used to building stuff on their trips. This will be kind of a different ball game where you're interacting with the people and you're dressed as a clown or whatever, you're dressed in colorful clothes, and we're playing with them, and then we're delivering messages of hope, and then we give them whatever it is that we give them, food or
Mhm. I would recommend if you just from an outside point of view, making out some flyers, you or if you have an assistant or someone, just making out some flyers, kind of introducing yourself and seeing if you can get some church sponsors. I mean, it may not be a lot, but if you can get, I mean, really, like my town right here, we have 20 churches probably, and I mean, my gracious, look at the impact you could have if only they donated as little as $100 or $200. And of
right.
course, there's tax implications there. I don't know, nonprofit status and that kind of stuff. Someone qualified needs to answer those questions for you, but I would definitely recommend. And these churches are totally tax free. A lot of them are, holding on to well, I'm just gonna say it directly. They're holding on to a lot of money where attendance was higher in the 80s, 90s. I know that I've been in church meetings where, the church has a budget of $1,000 a month and they have 200 grand in the coffers and it's just sitting there collecting dust. It's not doing nothing. Particularly rural churches, and you're not seeing as many programs inside the churches. So, I mean, I would just, I would pray about it. I would reach out, make some flyers, get some introductions, and seek help. And I mean, my gracious, I would say it wouldn't surprise me if there's a million churches in America. I mean, I have no clue the number, but
And like I said, that I think that's what goes all the way back to that bullying mentality from like years ago. It's like, I hate to ask for help, and so yeah, and that's something that I need to overcome as far as whatever for the mission that I'm doing. I need to get better at just asking for help, even if it's just reaching out. They can't say yes if they don't know about it. So
right, and just getting a meeting with the deacon, and it is
Mhm.
painful to ask for things. It sucks, but my idea is it's always easier to get $100 from 50 people than $5,000 from one person.
Right. Mhm.
And and you don't know. Maybe they have you could even offer things. You could go and say, okay, well, listen, I'll come. You sponsor me, and I'll come do a show with your youth group or something on a Sunday. And our church does things like that. They'll go to the movies, or they'll do something to involve the kids, and it helps to bring more children out in the churches. So really, I don't. Everybody kind of wins. So I mean,
Right.
pray about it, think about it, but I would definitely recommend that from an outside point of view.
We'll do it.
And on my behalf, I will link the clownsonthemission.com down in the description so people can donate directly if they would like.
Okay.
Is there any other place that they can sort of look at or donate if they wish to?
That's mainly our main website, and like I said, we are doing like I said, we have on our Facebook, we are doing like t-shirt fundraiser. So if they even want to go, and they can also get to that from the Clowns on a Mission website as well. Um,
Awesome.
you know, so they can always buy a t-shirt because we get so much from each t-shirt sale that goes toward, all of the money from the t-shirt sales go directly to our mission in Guatemala.
hmm What does the t-shirts have on them?
They all say Clowns on a Mission. So one of them has our logo. Actually, this logo right there,
No,
right there. There we go.
no.
So
Awesome.
one of them has that logo and then it says Love Heals at the top. We actually just did a brand new t-shirt um, because we keep going into Spanish speaking countries. And I thought, we should probably do maybe a Spanish shirt. So we got a nice little Spanish shirt that says, payasas. It's like a little bow tie on the t-shirt with suspenders on it. So, but everything is in Spanish on that particular one. So we have about 5 or 6 different styles of shirts that people can order off of there. There's like a journal on there, just some different things if they would like to donate that way.
Yeah, sure. Awesome. I want one of the t-shirts actually myself. Everybody who comes on my podcast usually has a book that they're writing and everybody's kind of, helping each other out, promoting each other. That's kind of like what podcasts are about now. Um, but I've never got a t-shirt. It's interesting. I might have to jump over there afterwards.
We got t-shirts, we've got sweatshirts, we've got hoodies, tank tops, all kinds of different things with our logo, with the different logos on them. So
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I guess I will give you the last 5 minutes or so here to talk about anything that you want, plug anything that you want. I know you said you were kind of working on a book, but it's maybe not done yet.
yeah, right now it's
Um,
going through the editing phases right now. So we're getting ready to edit that. Like I said, it's called Be the Someone, how to take action while the rest of the world waits. And so it's just basically talking, we talk about our mission, but then we all talk about other people who have just kind of started where they are. So, as you were talking about your philanthropy hopes and, how you're wanting to start, sometimes you just got to start where you are, whether it's just handing somebody a large fry, and to
mhm,
feed them. You just start where you are, and it kind of talks about how to go from starting where you are. Like I said, and it kind of goes through our journey from the last 2 or 3 years with Cons on a Mission. And we're not where we want to be yet, but then and we're quite honest in the book about that. And but we're talking to other people who are doing startup mission work and other missions. So that book hopefully will be out by the end of the year. And like I said, we're going to have its own website and it'll have its own Facebook and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we'll start kind of promoting that. And like I said, we're always promoting our clown tours. Like I said, you can always go to clownsonamission.com and click on the little Guatemala tab, and you can find out all about our upcoming mission. We've already set the dates for 2026. And like I said, if we decide to do one to Costa Rica, we'll add that there as well, and kind of how you can be a part of that. Um, I always think that, what's really interesting about a clown tour is, we go there and as you might be aware, when you do any kind of philanthropy, the idea, of course, is to change the lives of the people in the country that you're going to. But the unexpected result is it actually changes the lives of the people who are actually going on that trip and helping those people. You don't really realize that by going there, being happy and giving all of yourself, um, how that in turn heals you from whatever it happens to be that's going on in your life. It's just amazing how the simple act of charity and giving blesses you in ways that you can't even think of. So,
mhm. The Bible specifically says that those who give to the poor lend to the Lord. And I mean, outside of that, just everyone that's a natural human being wants to, it feels good when they help others.
mhm.
Then they also, there's nobody who has ever fed a child who was hungry and thought a negative thought afterwards. I really like the idea of just your philosophy of being, you have your overall goal, but start today with whatever you can. Start small, and um, that brings me back to another biblical saying from Jesus, and that is, um, uh, those who are faithful with a little will be faithful with a lot.
Yeah,
And that definitely works for your mission. It definitely works for my mission, because we have to start small to get to the larger thing. You can't skip steps.
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, something I've always heard in church. I mean, I don't know if there's a specific verse in the Bible that says this, but it's kind of like, if you're not going to use what you have, then you're not going to get more. Kind of,
Right.
I think there's a story about like the talons and how God gave somebody so many talons, and they were supposed to, try to multiply the talons. Well, you had two people who were going out and they were doing things. One of the people buried their talons and said, oh, I still have my two talons or whatever it happens. I mean, I may be simplifying the story or getting it all wrong.
No, no, you're okay.
Um, but that's kind of the thing. Is kind of like we're going to use, we use whatever money we raise on each particular trip that we have, we use it. And then, then we're back down to zero. Then it's like we start building up it again. And, we'll go with our next trip. And, if we can get more, we get more. If we can't quite get as much, we'll get what we can get. Um, and then we deplete it all. And then we just, it's just kind of an ongoing thing. So,
Mhm.
um,
No rollover funds. I
yeah.
like that. I like that idea because if you start doing rollover funds, the business side of everything in life, you're going to start trying to come away with a little more rollover
Mhm.
funds here and there. and I could see it turning into more of a business than the original mission.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. So we use what we got. That's why when we're there, like, well, do we have enough for this? Okay, we got enough. All right, let's do it. And
Yeah.
then you know
Yeah.
in
Awesome.
each trip we had, we had something new. We found out, relying on locals' cars was not always the was not always the best idea. After the first
Hmm.
year, we had flat tires and locked keys in the cars, and so this year
Hmm.
we decided, we're going to rent a vehicle. We're going to rent a van that'll actually transport all of the clowns and all of the supplies and all that stuff. And so yeah, so I mean there are expenses that we also foresee, but then we kind of budget that into our plan. So and we just kind of work from what we got, and eventually we'll get it down to a science eventually. But right now it's just kind of we're working
Hmm.
from where we are with what we got, and
Work from where you are with what you got. I'm writing
yeah.
it down. I like to do a quote with each one. I just like to learn from people. Work from where you are. Well, Mr. Bullseye the Clown, I really appreciate you. You've been an excellent guest. I'll ask you one last question that I ask everyone.
Uh-oh.
And be honest, I'm open to constructive criticism. So obviously you've been on other podcasts. How
Mhm.
do you view my approach on this? Do-
No, I like the approach. Um I always kind of panic whenever I go onto people's websites because I feel like I'm it's a pop quiz that I forgot to study for. I'm like I
Yeah,
have no idea what they're going to ask. The approach is great, and like I said, and I also like hearing something I don't always get from other podcasts is I don't really get to hear the story of the person who's interviewing me. You know,
no,
a lot of times they are asking me all about my mission work and what we do, but at the same time, as a philanthropist myself, and liking to know what other people are doing, it was nice to hear your stories about going to um Egypt and going to Sodom and
no,
Gomorrah.
yeah, really. Um,
Yeah, but so again, it's just nice to hear other people's stories as well. So I do like the approach that it's not all about your guest, and in that instance that you're able to share your own story through each podcast as
mhm.
well.
Yeah, and it adds to, in my opinion, the conversation, that approach. I watched some before I started this, and they were so analytical. They just go down this list of questions, and somebody like yourself would answer a question. They'd say, "Oh, well, that's interesting." Then they'd ask a totally off-topic question, and you might say, "Well, that allows them to be more prepared, but it also doesn't make for an organic conversation."
Right. Yeah. Especially when you're talking to a clown. I have no logical train of thought either. So, so that if you say, "Hey, a few minutes ago we were talking about this," I'm like, "Oh, we were? Okay."
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
so
the beauty of podcasting, and I try not to research my guests too much. Obviously, I see directories, I see the overall summaries, in the beginning, but after that, I try not to research at all because it allows me in real time to learn alongside my guests.
well, right. I mean, the questions that you ask should lead somewhere. You know what I mean? As far as as you were talking about having like a set of 10 questions. Okay, we covered those 10 questions. Thank you very much. You know,
Yeah.
Well, no, it's like, you ask one question to get the ball rolling, and then that just starts its own little avalanche of things. And then you're like, oh,
Hmm.
wait, I didn't really want to talk about, Egypt right here, but he kind of brought this up. So this is what's triggering my mind. So let me go into that, and it just kind of is a natural progression of conversation as
Hmm.
opposed to something that is forced. So
Hmm.
that's what's really nice is it just felt like a nice conversation with a clown.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, that makes two of us.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say I'm talking about you, not me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your honest feedback, and I may reach out via email and get you on again sometime in the future.
Well, that would be awesome. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
awesome. All right. Well, you have a great day, and I appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.